As the title says, I am incredibly torn on Dynasty Warriors Origins, after now having played through the publicly available gameplay demo. In short, it was a hell of a lot of fun, but I wouldn't quite say that it was exactly what I was hoping for from this game, and in a way, I'm not 100% sure a game like Origins is exactly what the fanbase is needing right now. But before we dive into my thoughts and first impressions, let's just do some quick housekeeping first. I'm sure my feelings on this game will change upon getting my hands on the full release in January. But as for now, these are just my thoughts and feelings on the game based on what I've played today, and what we've seen so far in trailers and showcases. This video's structure is also going to be incredibly loose and more of a laid-back discussion rather than a formal review or preview, as I've got a heap of thoughts racing around my head from my time with the demo, and I'm also kinda trying to get this video out as quickly as possible. One final thing I'll mention before diving in is that I'd like to thank the brave warriors of Craig's Army for supporting this channel of mine. If you're interested in supporting this channel and gaining access to members-only videos and our members-only Discord, I'll leave a link below in the description. Alrighty, now that that's covered, let's discuss why I'm actually really torn on Dynasty Warriors Origins. Firstly, I'd just like to emphasize that I do in fact really like what I've played here, and I think this game absolutely nails certain elements. Like the atmosphere on the battlefield in this demo is definitely unrivaled, especially when compared to any other Dynasty Warriors game that I've played so far. I also noticed that the combat actually genuinely felt more difficult in this game compared to more recent Dynasty Warriors games as well, which was a very pleasant surprise, but a welcome one. I feel like the enemy difficulty is tied to their unique moves, or larger-scale tactics, which is clearly broadcasted with the orange glow or aura emitting from enemy troops. Another factor to consider with regards to the enemy difficulty is the morale system, or in this game I'm pretty sure it's called courage. The difference in how aggressive the enemy behaves depending on how much courage their forces have is night and day, which again is a very welcome feature. For the longest time, there have been arguments stating that Koei games haven't been difficult since they've started to really jack up the numbers of enemy peons on screen, and that the enemy AI can't continue to be as aggressive. However, I feel like Origins kinda has the solution, or at least Koei's response to this issue anyway. So in a way, I feel like both sides of the argument are getting something out of this game, like massive hordes of enemies, complemented with a decent challenge. It was also super impressive how well the game managed to run with so many enemies on screen all at once. I was playing this demo on the PS5 Pro, and not once did the game ever really feel like the frame rate slowed down, which is an issue that's plagued these games since its hack-and-slash inception. All of this aside, my overall experience was mostly positive with this gameplay demo. However, I do have some reservations from the demo which kind of bleed into my concerns with Origins when looking at this series from more of a broader perspective. But first, let's quickly look at these initial reservations from the demo, which will be more of a rapid-fire list of observations. So I don't feel like the HUD, menus, and the whole strategy design is the most intuitive or accessible to newcomers of this game or series. It almost felt designed for those who have pre-existing experience with a Muso game, which hey, that's a good thing, right? It seems Koei is somewhat trying to cater to the existing fanbase. Well, to me with this new solo story-focused structure, this game honestly feels like it's trying to head more towards a mainstream direction and trying to capture a new audience, one that would be into games like Wolong and Elden Ring. So to me it feels like the game is kinda at odds with itself, trying to design the game for existing fans while trying to appeal to a new audience. And while I think it's important to focus on attracting newcomers, I think it's equally as important to create a game that's newcomer-friendly. But I'll touch more on that at the end. I'll admit that I'm a little tired of the Wolong comparisons with this game, but at this point, I really can't deny that it kinda has that Wolong aesthetic and presentation. I'm genuinely intrigued with how this story is going to play out in the full version of the game, and I only hope that to compensate for the lack of customization, we'll be given enough free reign to serve whomever we please, in a similar vein to Destiny mode. But anyway, focusing more on the actual gameplay for a bit now. It definitely took me a little while to get adjusted to the new button mapping, but like any new Dynasty Warriors game, that's something I can get used to. Like whenever I'd try to call my horse, I would keep activating my tactics mode accidentally. But the one thing I'll say that I do really like is that your horse just appears and you mount it immediately. Say goodbye to waiting an eternity for your horse in Samurai Warriors 4-2. Now this game does have a right trigger ability wheel similar to Dynasty Warriors 9 and Samurai Warriors 5, and these abilities are called arts. You can choose what ability goes where, and for the most part each of them does something different. For example, pressing the right trigger and the circle button when timed correctly will block or prevent an enemy officer's special move when they're emitting that orange glow. But overall, while I think adding even more abilities to your character's arsenal is actually a good thing, personally, I'm really just not loving this trend of having such a focus on this ability wheel system. It really makes this game feel like something that is trying to imitate a Dynasty Warriors game, rather than actually just being one itself. For example, when Dynasty Warriors 9 had the ability wheel system, it felt like that was the main method of combat, with your square and triangle attacks being something you'd use in the seconds between, while waiting for your abilities to reset. There's a lot of things wrong with Dynasty Warriors 9, but one of them for sure was its combat. As for Samurai Warriors 5, this ability system was more or less relegated to a bonus move, something you could use if you wanted to use it, but it wasn't essential. The playable character still had a relatively robust moveset of attacks to use, and could clear a battle without even needing to use their special abilities. So I feel like this really helped Samurai Warriors 5 feel like a proper Musou game to me, despite my feelings towards the direction that game took. And as for Dynasty Warriors Origins, I feel like this game's art system falls somewhere in between Dynasty Warriors 9 and Samurai Warriors 5. The Wanderer feels capable of fighting in a classic Musou fashion in most instances, without the need to use an art or ability. But in other instances, it basically feels like you don't have much of a choice, and it's needed to really do any proper damage to an enemy officer. But to close out my thoughts on this particular component of combat, I just want to clarify that I don't actually dislike the ability or art system. But just as a personal preference, I'd rather not have it implemented so heavily in a Dynasty Warriors game. I'm not saying I want the old-school PS2 era of Dynasty Warriors to be brought forward to the modern generation of gaming, as I don't really see myself as being in that camp at all. But I do appreciate the feeling of exploring the unique gameplay of my character movesets through a combination of normal, charge, and Musou attacks, rather than using a wheel of flashy animated abilities where I only needed to basically press a button once to activate it. For me, that just takes a game series that's already well known for its mindless hack-and-slash fun, and almost turns its combo and moveset elements into something even more mindless. But with that being said, overall this game does seem to implement its special abilities a whole lot better than Dynasty Warriors 9. And if anything, I think if Dynasty Warriors 9 had originally implemented this exact ability system from Origins in the first place, a lot more people would have enjoyed that game more, myself included. One thing I'll be keeping an eye out for once the full game has come out in January is if your string of normal and charge attacks increase as you level up, or increase your weapon's proficiency. Personally, I'm really hoping that's the case. As for the story and cutscenes, it's a delight to see the Three Kingdoms campy dialogue delivered in English dubs again. I do think the voice acting featured in this demo is a step up from the voice acting in Dynasty Warriors 9, but it still feels a little off, and unfortunately doesn't quite hit the same as the voice acting from Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8. But honestly, after half a decade of no English dubs, I'll take what I can get at this point. The character redesigns will take a bit of getting used to as well, but overall I like the structure of this cutscene that played out, showing the draft under Yuan Shao's forces. I also liked that you have dialogue options when interacting with others in these cutscenes too. It kinda adds a bit of an RPG-light element, but it's a welcome addition all the same. One thing I did notice is that whenever someone mentioned the word Wanderer, it was never actually spoken out loud in the English dub, so I'm wondering if our hero is actually being called something else here, and Koei has just cut it out of the demo here for the sake of spoilers. Also, it should go without saying that the music in this demo was absolutely unreal. If there's one thing that Koei always manages to do incredibly well without fail, it's nailing the music. This demo has got me super excited for the full game's release, just so I can listen to the game's soundtrack. Now, before I wrap this video up, I really wanted to touch on some of my broader feelings towards this game since watching all of the trailers, showcases, and having played the demo firsthand. To properly explain what I'm about to say, first, I want to take a quick look back at the main Koei Warriors games released over the past 5 or 6 years. Obviously, we have the infamous Dynasty Warriors 9, Koei's attempt at dipping their toes into the open-world RPG genre, and we all know how well that turned out. Following this, we received Warriors Orochi 4, which many people thought was a fairly okay title, however was still considered to be a bit of a step down from previous series entries. And eventually Samurai Warriors 5 was released in 2021, and while it did receive a lot of praise for being a more story-focused title, along with mixing things up with its art style, the game also received a lot of criticism for dramatically cutting down its character roster size and incorporating cloned movesets, which was a first for the Samurai Warriors series. In the following year, we received an Empire's title for Dynasty Warriors 9, which seemingly received a fair amount of praise for doing the best that it could with Dynasty Warriors 9's assets. But overall, it was still generally looked upon a little more unfavorably when compared to other Empire's titles in the series. On top of this, outside of the new games released by Koei during this period, there has also been a massive influx of re-releases and definitive editions for alternative platforms such as the PC. And while I wouldn't typically have any issues with finally releasing an older game on a newer platform, to me this just feels like more of a cash grab when mixed in with the middling game releases over the past 5 or 6 years. But anyway, the reason why I'm trying to emphasize how inconsistent these past few years' worth of games have been is to really stress the point that Koei really can't afford to screw this game up. Overall fatigue with the Dynasty, Samurai, and Warriors Orochi games has truly been setting in, and I'm not so sure the core fanbase has much more patience for experimental games or even just straight-up average games, especially when the consumer trust in Koei feels like it's been hovering at an all-time low. I've mentioned that I don't feel like Origins is exactly the game we are needing right now at this point in the Dynasty Warriors series. And that's not to say that this game is going to be bad or anything. Like I've been saying, for the most part I actually really like what I'm seeing here with this game. But this game isn't exactly Dynasty Warriors 10. It's a new experimental game with a solo-driven story and is lacking the option to play as any other characters outside of brief opportunities mid-battle with our companions. By this point, I feel like the Warriors fanbase is well and truly hungry for a fully realized and polished mainline Dynasty Warriors game. Like, say what you want about Dynasty Warriors 8, but to me that feels like it was the last proper mainline Dynasty Warriors entry, and that game was released almost 12 years ago now. Also, one of the things that makes these Warriors games so special is the element of choice, the ability to choose who you want to go into battle with from an expansive roster of unique characters. I felt like there was so much excitement surrounding the prospects of playing as our beloved characters once again in Dynasty Warriors Origins, but at this point it seems like out of the 47 confirmed unique characters, only 9 of them will be playable as a companion. I'm not sure if this is still the case though, as I've seen on the website that there are other story characters or even some others like Lu Bu or Dio-chan that the Wanderer can bond with. So maybe they'll end up being playable too, but who knows. But yeah, I'm all for a story-driven game that's a solo adventure for a hero in the Three Kingdoms setting, and for the most part I'm still really excited to see how the story is handled in Origins. But I just wish Koei would have committed to making a proper mainline Dynasty Warriors first, then follow it up with a solo-focused game like Origins afterwards. The last point I'll mention for this video is a reflection on something I mentioned earlier, and that was regarding the feeling that Origins is trying to appeal to a new audience. Yesterday, I asked one of my friends to play the demo as well, and to share their thoughts on it. For context, they're massively into gaming, but they've never played a Dynasty Warriors game before. He's mentioned before that he's been curious about these types of games, but never got around to giving them a go. So I thought, perfect. This is such a great opportunity to hear a fresh perspective on this type of game from someone completely new to the genre. And the verdict is that he felt like the whole demo experience was super confusing. He didn't really have any idea what was going on, except that he felt like this overpowered anime-style character on a battlefield. And long story short, he thought it was pretty cool, but didn't really get the game or find it really all that accessible, and ultimately couldn't see himself playing this again or buying a copy of the game. Now, I'm not saying his word is gospel or treating it as definitive or anything, but I thought it would be interesting to get a fresh perspective on this upcoming entry. But anyway, in closing, did I enjoy my time with this new demo? Yeah, I sure did. I'm definitely cautiously optimistic for Origins release, and while it's not exactly shaping up to be the Dynasty Warriors game I was hoping for, it still looks like it'll be better than Dynasty Warriors 9, so that's at least a pretty solid bonus as far as I'm concerned. But either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this demo in the comments below. Out of curiosity, based on this demo, do you think you'll be getting a copy of Dynasty Warriors Origins? Or are you feeling undecided or unsure of the direction of this game? Either way, let me know down below. And lastly, as always, I just want to give a shout out to the channel members you're seeing on screen right now for supporting this channel of mine. If you're interested in gaining access to exclusive members-only videos, as well as our Discord, I'll leave a link below in the description.